Well, that was quick. Wait, that wasn't a whole minute.
No, it wasn't a whole minute. Actually, April Fools. But
Oh man, you
anyway,
tricked us.
yes, that was by accident. Sometimes it comes a minute, sometimes it doesn't. And if you're watching three people on your screen, you're watching Job Seeker Nation. Thank you very much for joining us. Here we appear on my timeline, but my timeline is your timeline for the next hour. We appear 1 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday, 12 o'clock Central. We'd love to have you. We also want you to participate in the chat. So, those comment boxes, they act as a chat now for this particular show if you're watching. And we want you to ask questions, comment, give advice, fraternize between each other. We would love it. We'd love for you to be a part of this show, and you are, and you're the most important part. We'll even interrupt our itinerary for you and to answer your questions. Also, here with me is Jack Kelly, founder of Recruiter and also senior Forbes career contributor. How are you, sir?
Good, thanks. Thanks.
Good deal. And with this week, we have Jessica Sweet. She is a career coach and she's part of the same fraternity slash sorority I'm a part of, the Job Scans Top 25 Career Coaches. And
Ooh.
her site is right
Nice.
there for the viewing, wishingwellcoach.com. By the way, that is such a brilliant URL, Jessica.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I love that. That told me everything I need to know about you. So I definitely want everybody to be sure to follow Jessica, follow her on her timeline. If you're on LinkedIn, we streamline or stream live stream to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. LinkedIn, of course, is our prominent. You could follow Jack and I's timeline, and it doesn't matter which one you follow. I can see comments everywhere where we are. So I want to be sure that we capture you. And first one to show up is Melissa. So I definitely want to give Melissa a shout out. And anybody else wants a shout out, I'll get you in a moment. But I want to go ahead and start our discussion here as we talk about what to do if to kind of navigate this fall job search. And already it is kind of crazy, and there's a lot of things going on. So let's go ahead and dig into the topics. This is not a novel idea. This is kind of one of the underground topics that really, it was more kind of like a blue collar thing has been traditionally, but I think now that somebody has bought it up and it was written in Forbes, now it's a white collar thing too. Um, you guys, what do you think about getting paid every day? It's out there in the world now. I mean, it's been done before, and in certain jobs, it's been done and it's being done. But what do you think about for white collar jobs and for it to be a mainstream and a norm? Are you for it or against it? We're going to start with the girl, Jessica.
That would be me. Yeah.
Yes.
So, I think this is an interesting idea, but I think a lot of employees would be for it, because who doesn't want cash flow in their bank account every day? I mean, it sounds like a great idea. But I think if you dig a little bit deeper, and I am no economist, so I can't say what the ramifications would be.
Hmm.
I think if you dig a little bit deeper, there are probably some effects that we would have to consider. So the article talked about companies need a lot more cash on hand to be able to pay employees. And I don't know what the ripple effects of that would be. I'm sure there would be some ripple effects in banking and other areas as well that I don't have a handle on, what that would actually mean. But I think that I would need to know a heck of a lot more about all of the ripple effects to be able to say whether I'm truly for it or against it. But I think what I could say is the reasoning for it is that there are gaps in employees' ability to cover the month, basically. And I think understanding that more deeply is something that companies could help with, because you know, the question is why is that really happening? How can companies address that? Is that a problem that still would crop up even if people were paid every day?
Hmm.
Is it a budgeting problem? Is it a problem of housing costing too much or not having good enough health care?
Hmm.
So if there are underlying issues that are resulting in people not being able to cover their monthly expenses, what can companies do there rather
Hmm.
than having the cash flow problem be the thing that they're trying to resolve? Because it could be that that's really just a band-aid that could on the other side cause more problems rather than solve them.
Interesting take. And I appreciate thinking about that very deeply, because I think I thought about it. I kind of went to the well, so to speak, in thinking about it and trying to understand maybe part of the origin. I have some ideas, but I'm going to hold off and let Jack, because I know Jack has studied this very deeply over the last day or two, and of course, being we're all small business owners, but Jack has, I know, has a very unique preview of this. Your turn, Jack.
So it's interesting. One of the big macro things from this is coming out of the pandemic to me, and I'm sure you guys see it too. It
Hmm.
just seemed to give everyone license to say, hey, let's try new things. Let's look at things differently. Whether
Hmm.
it's a career and you're going to pivot, the great resignation, you're going to quit and find something else, the great realization, figuring, hey, what else is out there? And you see all these cool fintech, different startups in all these areas. And yes, it's been coming for a while, but it almost seems like it's accelerated now. It almost feels like anything goes, and I think we may have even talked about this other times, Mark, with NFTs, with cryptocurrencies,
Hmm.
with Bitcoin, with with meme stocks. It just seems wow, like it's we're entering a new era where every why not? Like, to be fair, I never even thought of paying every day.
Hmm.
It never occurred to me. I
Hmm.
did know, and I think as Jessica was kind of talking about, is that in the past you would have these payday loans, but they had kind of this murky feel to it that they were taking advantage of the people for payday loans by charging them a lot of fees or commissions or what have you,
Or 35% interest.
which is it's really bad, right? It's like loan
Yeah.
shark stuff. So
Hmm.
that it had that kind of very technical term, icky feel to it, right? And
Right.
but now, if you could do it right, and I think Jessica was talking about, like, if you could do it right, meaning that you're not going to gouge people, and you could pay every day. That
Hmm.
seems great. I mean, unless I'm missing some big, problem, I think for a lot of people who have cash flow issues, getting paid every day would be fantastic. Um, Especially, the beginning of the pandemic, there was so much reporting saying that people didn't have 3 months of emergency funds, so, and that if you were in between jobs or you lost your jobs, unfortunately for people who lost their jobs, there's enhanced unemployment. But let's say that wasn't the case. You don't have any money coming in. I mean, you're in a bad shape. So having it every day could pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things I had to do, because for me, every day is every 2 weeks really it wasn't such a big deal, except for the spending behavior. And I think people look at that and they say, well, people will spend it all. I said, well, if we can kind of separate the spending behavior from the economics for quite a bit. If you think about, this has been the norm for us for our lifetime. Got paid for every 2 weeks. If you worked certain jobs or what they call those professional jobs, and you got paid every month. And even get paid every month, that's not always a guarantee, because it depends on the company you work with and their spending habits and their access to cash. Having said all that, the 2 week is also antiquated. in the sense that this is something we grew up with and we thought this was the norm. And I get part of it is that, small businesses would be most at the disadvantage in paying every 2 weeks because that's not how cash flows. Cash comes in lumps many times. So you get the lump and you've got to pay, who you owe to. And depending upon your business, you got to pay it as fast as you possibly can. But the other part of it I thought about is that if you're paying every day, then the reason that that would completely obliterate the 2 week notice. Because one of the reasons why for the 2 week notice is to get the final, not just the final paycheck for that week, but also for the other compensation aspects of
Yeah.
someone's deal. So therefore, from the past, I can understand why that would be important. But really, in recent years, especially the past 25 years, we have something called paid current. And paid current allows you to pay the employee exactly what you owe them the day they leave. It used to be coming up in the 80s. I'm sorry, I'm that old, where you would leave after 2 weeks and there might be another month before you get everything else if you're working white collar America. So therefore, I understand it. I'm kind of conflicted about it, not because I have to separate spending behavior of a lot of Americans and probably 70% of
You know what it is too,
Americans.
Mark? Not to interrupt. It's
Yeah,
like I think part of it too is, hey, if I worked, and this is going back to what I mentioned earlier, that the pandemic made us think clearly about things. Like remote work is the best example.
yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
pre-pandemic, you know, you know, the percentage was probably what, under 5%, I think, of people working remotely. Now, during the pandemic, it was like almost 100% of white collar workers.
Hmm.
And if we had a conversation 2 years ago, people would laugh and say, "Come on, you're not going to get almost everybody working remotely. It's impossible." Same thing with pay. Now it seems like, why, if you really think about it, why not? If you worked today, right? Why do you have to wait 2 weeks to get that money? And it always kind of bugged me as a recruiter. What happens? You get big lumpy checks because you get your placement fee,
Right.
and usually the terms are you'll get paid. Let's just say for the sake of conversation, 30 days.
Hmm.
You don't get paid in 30 days. There's always an excuse. You have to chase somebody down. It's 60 days, 90 days, whatever it may be. And then I'm thinking about, I know why they're doing it. Because let's say you have a big organization and it's not just, placement fees, recruiter fees, you have all sorts of vendors. So if the companies sit on all that cash, they have control over the cash and they get the interest on that cash and they can use that cash. So
Hmm.
it's to their best interest not to give it out because they have control over it. And if they do give it out, they lose control over it. It's going to cost them. So
Right.
it'll be. I think this is, and another thing I've seen with the pandemic is that there could be winners and losers. The winners are kind of these companies that say, hey, if Mark, you're going to relocate to another state that's less expensive than, let's say, Chicago, you're going to get paid the same. Don't worry about it. Others are going to say, nope, we're going to cut your salary. I think some companies like on Wall Street are saying you've got to get back to the office. Others aren't. So I think the ones that really take care of their employees, whether it's remote work, whether it's hybrid work, whether it's not cutting your pay if you move somewhere cheaper, or getting paid every day, that's where a lot of people are going to say, you know what, I'm going to work for that company because I want to go to a company that cares about me. Maybe they're going to take a little bit of hit financially by doing this, but I'll work harder because I'm more appreciative because I know you're doing the right thing by us. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Oh, it makes total sense. Jessica, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking about this in one of my groups this morning about how to basically price yourself or ask for salary for a remote job, and it is really tricky because you don't have any geographical location anymore to compare to other employees. It's
Hmm.
really just work. But yeah, I really think that in the end we'll see kind of how it shakes out, and it will shake out at some point soon. We'll have to see what companies overall do, but the great resignation is a sign of what employees want. I mean, they do want more meaningful work. They do want companies that care about them, and they're going to vote with their feet. They're going to go to places um, that show what matters, and put their money where their mouth is, and take care of their employees. And those are the companies that are going to be the ones that get the talent and retain the talent, and that they're going to be the employers of choice in the future, because people do want to work remote.
Mhm.
Hey,
Yeah,
Jessica, just out of curiosity, have you seen
go
a
ahead.
lot of your clients, quit with this whole great resignation, or not so much?
Yeah, no, definitely. People are exploring other opportunities. They're exploring different modes of, so remote, different modes of working. Um, yeah, absolutely. They're really, thinking about in a new way, and refusing to go back to the office. They don't want to do it.
That's what I'm hearing too. So you're hearing like a lot of people saying, "Hey, if I got to go back, I'm not going to
Not
do."
doing it. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and I think what it is that people are considering their lives first.
Hmm.
And, I think the question isn't particularly why as much as why not? Why not get paid quicker? Why not? Why can't I
Exactly
work?
right. It's like
Why
if you could
can't
do
I
it,
work this? Why can't
yeah,
I work? Yeah, why
yes,
can't I work from
yes.
home? Or why can't I have a choice
Hey,
between working
right.
from
If
home
you're
and
doing a
working?
good job working from home,
All of those things
why not?
are very much have been breaking the barriers that we're used to, and all the traditions that we're used to now. We have to get used to unraveling them and ask why not, because in
Hmm.
this world we have the technology that
Yeah.
makes just about everything that we're used to, that we're used to, that it's like, it should be a lot more convenient, at least for me to have access to my workplace when I want it, and when I don't want it.
Right.
So all these questions are becoming now because we all went home. That one time when we were told 6 months or a year or 2 years or 5 years before it all happened that it wasn't possible. Then, since when it became possible, now all of these questions became very, very important
Mhm.
to unravel. I want to grab a couple of comments first. I wanted to thank Melissa for joining us, and Elaine to say, have you noticed people resigning and moving into the nonprofit space to do more meaningful work? That
Yes.
becomes interesting. Now, one
Yes.
thing I have
Yeah.
noticed is that people are also considering that doing that volunteer work virtually, and also using that kind of as a bridge to their next job to pivot. So that's becoming a lot more frequent. Although that was available, is very prevalent now that we see. You guys, Jessica, what have you seen? Have you seen something like that?
Yeah, I have. I've seen a lot of people looking for more meaningful work, and some of them, yes, moving into the nonprofit space. But a lot of them, again, some of them into nonprofit, but a lot of them are looking for, where can I make an impact?
Hmm.
What kind of company is doing work that I care about, or is doing something meaningful to me? And then the last kind of category that I have in my mind is what kind of company culture resonates with who I am. So for
Hmm.
me, it's like three different categories that I think about. And to my clients, it's not all happening in the nonprofit space. I do see that some, but it's happening everywhere, and they're thinking about those three things.
Yeah, yeah, yep. And Erica, by the way, she appreciates your insights into
Thank
this
you,
as well.
Erica.
Yeah, I think as well. I think one of the things that I kind of lost a little bit of my thought, but I think when we get into the whole idea of the disruption that's beginning to take place, and we're asking questions that we've never asked before, but a lot of when we ask the one question, there's also several other questions as well. And one thing I brought up too is the fact that the 2 week notice is also, maybe I didn't bring it up, but that's what I was thinking. The 2 week notice will go out the window. That there'll be, there's definitely, that will be a dead thing. because everybody can be compensated immediately, especially when there's just one return button away from having everything
Yeah,
happen. Did
but
you
there
want to
still
add
will be
anything?
because
Go
a lot of
ahead,
times
Jack.
when yeah, because like when people give their 2 weeks notice, I gotta tell you, let's say for certain professionals, it's really like it could be 3, 4 weeks, it could be a month. It
Yeah,
depends on what level. Because if you're pretty senior level, it's hard to just say, okay, I'm out the door. Now,
right.
you get some people who are ticked off and leave and say, you know, F you and then just get out of there, sure.
Mhm.
But that's burning bridges and that's very far and few between. Mostly they want to keep the relationships going. And I would, yeah, definitely suggest people, you want to give that two or, or more to hand off your work, to leave like like a professional, to make sure everything's covered. And then also a lot of times what people do is then they just take an extra week or so off for themselves just to kind of decompress before starting a new role.
And you know what? I thought about that too. But
Yeah.
the other thing I thought about is that work is much more now streamlined, that we have work groups that are that that there are things that people work on. Maybe there might be something that I might be working on, but mostly if you're working as a team, most of your work is out there, and even if you disappeared, it would be handed off anyway in some kind of way, and it wouldn't take all that much time. So I think a lot of that breakdown as we know it, that would be nice to have, but I think that's more of a luxury item than it is something that it has to happen. It would be a luxury to be able to have a smooth handoff. But I think it be practical and really not that bad to be able to say, "Hey, today's my last day." You have most of your project, and
Yeah,
maybe
but it
it's
depends. I
gone.
mean, there's so many things. Like if you have someone leave, there's so many moving parts
I
that
agree.
you need to
I
make
agree.
sure that when the person leaves, you kind of know what's outstanding, what's pending, what's going on wherever it's going
Mhm.
on, and then you find out too. Even if someone leaves 2 weeks and gives 2 weeks notice, you tend to even have to call them and get in touch with them down the road because hey, where's this document? Where's that document? How did we leave off with this customer and so on?
Right.
Um,
Right.
and that's why I think for people it's so important with this great resignation where you hear stories, and this is why maybe I'm a little adamant about it because you hear all these stories about people just hey we're quitting, and it sounds
Mhm.
cool, it sounds great, hey I'm out of here, and you tell your family, your friends, look what I did, but then sometimes you regret it. Like, hey, I moved too quickly. I should have thought this through. I should have maybe got another job before I left. I should have been more of a gentleman or gentlewoman when I left to really keep the goodwill so that when I go to the next company, I get a good reference instead of, they call up and say, hey, yeah, Jack just bolted out, left, didn't help out. So it's to me, it hits a sore point because I'm really concerned for a lot of people who get caught up with this. Whenever you have the kind of media saying, "Hey, this is what's happening," people jump on the
Mhm.
bandwagon, and it
Mhm.
can have really adverse impacts on people. I mean, what
Yeah.
do you think, Jessica? What do you see with the people you work with?
Yeah, I mean, I generally see almost always, unless there's a super, super toxic work situation going on, I almost always see people handing off
Yeah,
nicely because the people that I'm working with do understand the power of not burning bridges and keeping those connections. And there are, like you said, Jack, a lot of moving parts and a lot of relationships oftentimes. So
yes, good
those
point. Yeah,
intros are also really important, whether they're internal or external. And understanding like how people work together and the nuances of that can be really critical to making the next person successful. So I see the handoff happening
yeah.
unless again there's something really bad going on.
It's interesting, Jessica. You made me think of something. I saw, I didn't read the whole story, but saw kind of a headline and a little bit of it. Now that people are remote, when they leave, even if they leave giving notice, it's weird because you don't have that goodbye party. You don't have the hugs goodbye.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Oh, hey, let's stay in touch. Here's my number. You have that kind of weird thing when people give their notice in the office in person because, maybe you're happy that the person is leaving for them because they have a better opportunity making more money. You'll miss them because they're kind of your work wife or work husband, and then remote work, they're just gone.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. It's a weird dynamic. Is that this is under this new pandemic world? How like you get this weird things
Well,
going on.
and that's why I think a lot of things again go back to the aspect of behavior. We think that the behavior is going to match the technology. In some cases, it will. Some cases, it won't. In fact, it'll be acceptable, and perhaps it will also kind of curtail some of the workplace behaviors that we're used
I,
to, like
huh, wait, I like that. Wait,
the
wait, wait.
workplace
What's
husband,
you say that
workplace
again? I like
wife.
that, Mark. What was that? Wait, the technology.
The
Wait, that was a
technology
really
doesn't not
profound.
necessarily go along with the behavior always.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's separate, but a lot of times
yeah.
it's going to catch up. It's sort of like your body adjusting to the cold or to the heat. It either will, some people do, some people don't. But for most part, your body does adjust. Now you may be colder because it's cold. That's one thing. But I think ultimately is we're used to accepting things because that's the behavior
Mm,
that's accepted. That's not necessarily the case now. The case is if it's possible, then why not? And in some cases, it's cheaper to pay people, daily. In some cases, it may be expensive. It may be a bank issue. It may be some other issues that are largely that we haven't even talked about. But I think that's some of the challenges that comes along with it. We got a couple of questions here, and I do want to table our discussion because this is something that's very interesting, and I think that has a little to do with the overall theme of what people need to do to job searches fall. Says Andrew, thanks for commenting. He says I put in dozens of applications and cover letters and never hear an answer. I reach out to people in HR and I get the standard follow the process answer. That is something that is, every day, every hour, every second that it happens. One of the things I think, if Andrew, one thing you can probably do, there are plenty of people on LinkedIn who are HR professionals who don't mind you following and even don't mind you reaching out, but it's in the relationship. And what a lot of people end up doing is they end up playing the short game, which is annoying. In other words, I put in an application as opposed to playing the long game. Hey, I just want to connect with you. I'd like to see your updates. That's a whole lot different. That's a long game. And then when you put in that application, your name is going to be noticed, right? So I'm just giving the short spell. But Jessica, I know that you've got strategies up the wazoo for this in particular. So if you don't mind sharing one or two of them with Andrew, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Andrew, I feel for you. You're definitely not alone. So I see a couple things right in those two sentences that you could be doing differently. So one is putting in dozens of applications and cover letters says to me that you're applying online. That's the first thing that I would stop doing, and try to get an ally within the organizations that you
Mhm.
are applying to, and see if you can get somebody to concierge your resume and cover letter into the HR office. That's the first
Mhm.
thing. The second thing is HR folks are overwhelmed, like so many people today, and they are going to tell you to follow the process. I mean, it's the only thing that they can do. There are going to be some exceptions to that. Some people will allow you to bypass the process. But the only case in which they will do that is if you stand out as an absolutely exceptional candidate. One of the scenarios where that can happen is what you just heard, if you've got a prior relationship. Another way that can happen is if you've had somebody recommend you, somebody, hand delivering your resume. Another way that you can do that is if your personal branding is so outstanding, and your online presence, your LinkedIn, your resume, maybe some other things, maybe you have YouTube videos, other things that really deliver a power packed punch and really show I am the person for this particular job and here's why. That may allow you to bypass the process and have them say, wow, this is a candidate I need to talk to. Unless you have one of those things, they're going to tell you to follow the process because they cannot possibly talk to everybody who may be a possibility for the job. They only have time to, give special treatment to a very, very few. So you have to
Jessica,
put yourself into one of those categories.
to reach out for Andrews, to reach out, how would you suggest, like, what's the best way to try to find kind of an insider at the company or someone you know who knows someone? Is
Mm-hmm.
it through LinkedIn? What would you suggest to him?
Yeah, I mean, I think LinkedIn is a fantastic tool for that. It has sort of the map. It shows you the first degree
Mhm.
connections, the second degree connections, the third. It shows you who people are. It shows you how they're connected to the organization. I mean, LinkedIn is a fantastic tool to help you find the right person and then help you get to know that person and then to build a relationship with that person. So yeah.
Yeah, I really like all of Jessica's suggestions, but I think disrupting the hiring process through referrals is definitely the one that seems to land the increases the potential of getting an interview from 1 to 10 almost.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely agree with that. I think and I'm going to let Jessica's you know her suggestions sit. Those are really great suggestions. I won't add anything to it. Erica says bandwagon job search decisions are often a recipe for disaster. Possible exception: excellent leaders bringing powerhouse teams with them. Now, I think some of that is happening very often when things change. There's a disruption within the industry or within the company. For some reason, they want to formulate different teams now that people are going remote. I don't know why that is and why people can't keep it, but very often when there's change, there's a disruption within for whatever reasons there are. But I don't think there's always disaster. Jack, did you have any
Yeah.
insights into
So
Erica?
yeah, 2 points just to follow up what Jess was saying, and for Andrew, give you a real life example that just happened to me. Is
Mm,
that we're working on this role for a long time, had a couple of finalists, and the company says, "Well, we're interviewing an employee referral," and you can guess what happens next. It was the
hmm.
employee referral who got the job, and
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that happens a lot.
Hmm.
It's exactly, Jessica, what you were talking about. So somebody knew somebody. They said, I don't know who that they ultimately hired, but they found somebody, and it just always, not always, but definitely works that way, Jessica. You're so right. Is that if I know Mark, right, and I'm at the company, he sends a resume, and you're the hiring manager, Jessica. I'm like, hey, you got to meet Mark. He's a really good guy. He's a really good guy. Meet him, and then you have a stack of other resumes in your inbox. What are you going to do? Are you going to meet with Mark, or are you going to go through each one and see? You probably say, all right, let me just meet Mark. Let me see.
No,
Let me
no,
see.
I'm not going to meet Mark. I'm going to go through 1,000 resumes.
You're
Right?
right.
You go
Right.
1,000 resumes
Right.
first,
I really want
right?
to do 10 times the
It just
work.
makes life
Right.
easier. It's like, all right, hey, Jack's a reasonable guy. I trust his judgment. And also, if I don't meet Mark, he's going to nudge me and keep calling and bugging me. So I'm going to meet him because he's
Hmm.
going to, annoy me. So let me just meet him. And it works.
Yes.
Works. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, you're absolutely right, Jessica. And then with the bandwagon, if I understand it correctly, are you saying, Eric, is that what happens when like somebody leaves, then all of a sudden a whole bunch of other people leave? Is that what you
Yeah.
mean by
Yeah,
the bandwagon?
it's hard. Yeah, Erica, you
Is
can
that
go ahead, but Erica adds another comment here, and I think this is slightly different. She says, "Mark, I'm familiar with a number of companies that ask employees to leave immediately
good point?
upon
Yes,
resign."
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I've
You're
seen
like,
I've
yep,
seen that happen, and I think I told this story
yeah,
before. Is
yeah.
that when I resigned years ago from a large law organization, a lot of times people were either walked out or they were rushed in their 2 week. I was allowed 8 weeks total to resign my position and of course to fork everything over, and which was really rare. But I think that's to Jessica's point, there's some people, it depends upon the culture and of course the someone's behavior, perhaps that might be rushed along, or that could take a little bit more time. They don't want the person getting other people excited about leaving or just using their time. I don't know if that's always the case. I've seen where people have left and other people cheered because they left. That's, I, I've actually I didn't see it, but that's something that happened. Um, it's a long story,
No,
but
that
yeah,
happens. You
that
get
but
rid of a toxic employee, and oh my gosh, the
yes,
mood in
yeah,
that group changes
it's like getting
overnight.
getting a
Oh my
check.
god.
It's
When
like
you
getting
oh
a
my god.
bonus, you
When you
know,
get a
that
toxic employee and they're stuck there, everybody's so
yeah,
miserable.
everybody is
Oh,
sucks the life
it's
out of you.
so miserable.
And
Uh,
There also
that's
could
a real
be
thing.
there could also be security reasons as well. You don't know where
yes.
they're going,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
don't want, you just want them out and not touching any more information that you have.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Have you
Yeah.
seen this? This is terrible. To build upon what Jessica was saying is when you get this, and this happens not all the time, but you have the security guard who comes over and watches everything they put in their sad little box to take out and then escorts them out.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just so heavy handed. So, in other words, Mark was good enough to work for us for 10 years. But now that he's leaving, we have to have Rocco,
Have
the
to watch
security guard,
everything,
like
you
watch
know.
over, look at everything on the computer, walk you out the door. And it's embarrassing and kind of humiliating because people don't know, like, why is, Mark walking out or Jack or Jessica walking out, with those little boxes that you have to carry out with your sad little plant and everything else in it. And it's terrible.
Right.
Uh,
Erica goes on and she says, by bandwagon, I mean making decisions based on other people's impressions or
Oh,
media
yeah.
frenzy.
Yeah.
Don't necessarily mean the decision is best for you. Jessica is exceptional at this type of
Yeah.
discernment.
Okay, go, Jessica. You're excellent. All right. You're excellent. No pressure.
Yeah, right.
No pressure. Just have to have an exceptional with two asterisks answer. Wow, stress.
Right, right.
Erica, you're
So now
stressing
knowing
us
this
out
new
here.
intel, Jessica,
well,
did you?
I think what Erica means is that for a particular client, I can help the client decide what is best for them in a situation, and yeah, and not make decisions based on what else is going on in a situation. Like really hone in on what they need, what is right for them. So I think that's what she's talking about, because that's a lot of the work that I do when I work one-on-one with clients.
Well, that kind of morphs into our other topic is when is it the best time to quit? I think there's a lot of people who are really stuck with that they have to be dead tired of a job before they actually quit. When really, I think as entrepreneurs, we also kind of have to think about how we want to exit a business as well as how we want to enter a business. I think it's time for job seekers to really think about how they want to exit their current job. So uh, everybody will have a different point of view of this, but I think the only time when people think the only time is when you're dead tired of a job, sometimes that's too late to wait to where you're exhausted. So perhaps we can ask our panel here, when is the best time to enter enter another job or to quit the current one? Jack, your thoughts?
So I would say you probably should have a list in your mind. So let's say you haven't received a raise in X amount of years,
Hmm.
you haven't seen a bonus, you haven't seen a promotion. Instead of promoting from within, they bring people from the outside. Um, so that when you kind of look and see, wait a minute, the walls are coming in around me. I'm not getting raised, not getting a promotion.
Hmm.
Anyone who's coming in for senior roles coming from the outside. Um, I'm not getting more challenging, interesting work. Because then the writing's on the wall. Because then they're saying to you, basically, here's your
Hmm.
job, and that's pretty much it. But even if
Yeah.
it's that, right, and you're feeling not good about it, I would still
Hmm.
say before you make a decision, sit down with your boss, sit down with your supervisor, and have a heart to heart and say, hey, you know, I'm noticing I'm not getting any really juicy assignments. I'm not getting these sexy, projects to work on. You're bringing in new people. What do you think? What do you think of my abilities? Do I have a career track here? Do I have growth? And it's a very awkward conversation to have because they may say things you don't want to hear, but at least you know.
Right.
And then once you know, then you kind of sometimes you need to know that because then you realize, all right, they really don't value me. They don't have a future. They'll be happy if I just stay in this job for this amount of money, but that's it. So I have no choice to leave. So I think you really don't want to. You want to have some of these metrics that you can look at, and when you put them all together, it paints a picture of like, all right, this is it. Like, there's not much else I can do.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are good thoughts, Jessica.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with that. I think knowing what your priorities are is also important. So, do you care about learning and growing? Do you care about making a lot of money? Do you care about having flexibility? Which of those is most important to you? And then understanding, like Jack is saying, what is actually happening in your current role? Are you getting those things? And is there an opportunity to get more of the things that you're not getting? And then if not, time to move on.
That's a good
Yeah.
point, Jessica, because some people could be kind of happy if you have a job that pays, fine. They're not putting too much stress on you and all that. Then all right, yeah, maybe. Like I was looking at it from a vantage point of like, hey, you want to kind of step on the gas and kind of. But yeah, a lot of people are like, you know what, right now, I have young kids. I have a lot of other things. I have a lot of hobbies at home. I'm fine with doing that. So I'm glad you kind of brought that up because sometimes, yeah, that's what's good about having these kinds because people look at it from different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at it like, all right, you want to keep moving with your career, but there are a
Yeah.
lot of people at different points of their life. They're like, right now, I don't. Maybe 5 years from now, when the kids are older in school, then yeah. But right now, no, it's all cool.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but it also speaks to the amount of patience people have. That
Mhm.
people are very often very tolerant of a work environment that doesn't work with them because they were told in the past that you need to stick with the job for X amount of time, which really is being disrupted now because really, if you're spending 3 years at a job, it almost seems like it's too long, unless it keeps giving you the opportunities that you want. In most cases, most jobs aren't going to read the tea leaves and say, well, Jack really wants this position. Jack has to go and say, I'm really interested in that
Good
position.
point. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if I don't get an answer that says, well, you'll be great for it, i
Mhm.
i can help mentor you, or saying, well, it takes some time, and then they end up hiring somebody instead of you, then that is the sign that maybe it's time to go, which I think in many times these days, uh, people would think that it's time to go unless somebody, because a lot of times companies used to ask you at the beginning, what do you want out of this? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Blah, 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 blah. Of course, everybody forgets that conversation when someone's hired, I think. But I think ultimately is, by expressing what you want out of it and being upfront, and for it to be okay, it's a tough conversation still to have. And so
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
therefore you have to almost plan to leave, and somebody says, wait a minute, we had this for you, and it always had your name on it.
Always happens
That
that
might
way.
be yeah,
When
it
you're
might
walking
be a
out the door.
completely different, right, it might be a different conversation. At that point, you still want to question, that may not be a good idea to stay. But
Right.
nevertheless, I think
Yeah.
that tends to weigh. But I think that, yeah, people need to start thinking about the exit strategy,
Mark, you
to
mentioned you mentioned something very interesting about the exit strategy before about when you're feeling, and I'll paraphrase something to the effect of like when you're just feeling tired and worn out and burnt
yeah,
out. And you know what, Jessica, I'd be curious about like your thoughts on it because like in the past, I probably would have said the same thing, but with the pandemic, how like it's such an epidemic of just mental health issues and stress and burnout. Sometimes you think maybe like for the clients you deal with, you just need to just disconnect for a while.
Mm,
You know what I mean? That it's really not the job you hate. It's just you're just tired and worn out. Not necessarily the job, the people, but just life. You
yeah.
know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
everything. Like when you meet with, your clients, do you feel that from it? Like you want to say to them, hey, you're just tired and just beaten up. Don't make any rash decisions.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is true for some of them, but I think also assessing like, where is this tiredness coming from? Is it coming from work? In which case, yes, unplugging from work can help. But then if you have like 4-year-old twins, right, and you have money troubles, like unplugging from work isn't necessarily going to help that.
Yeah, working is probably easier than the twins.
Exactly. So you have to kind of figure out what, where is this coming from? Like
Yeah,
and
right.
what can you do to help? So maybe instead, getting your sister to come over for a week and right, and putting a budget in place, like that would be more helpful, right?
So it sounds like when you do it, I don't do it. It sounds like you give a holistic approach when you deal with people. You're not just like, I'm looking at it. I think Mark and I a lot of times look at it just the job, this and that. You're looking at it like the big picture, huh?
Yeah. Well, this is my social work and therapy background.
What comes in handy? Makes sense.
Mhm.
Oh, it makes sense. But I think also that larger companies have added where an employee can actually take a leave. And they could take a leave of absence. And we're not talking about taking vacation time for 2 weeks. We're talking about 4 to 6 weeks of an actual leave.
Sometimes you
And
need
could
that,
be
right? Like a week off
and
is
a
really
mental.
not a lot,
And I think it also
right?
it clears your head if you take
Yeah.
away, because 2 weeks is
It's
just
not
enough to
really a
shake your
lot,
head
right?
with cobwebs.
Yeah.
If you took 4 to 6 weeks and you're home, and by the fourth week you say, yeah, probably, I
I
can
can't wait to go
now
to
that
work to get away from the twins.
right,
Get these
right.
twins out of here.
Or like some people found out during the pandemic that my family really needs me, and I didn't know what was going on here, because one parent is taking care of the kids, doing all the arrangements, taking everything around, and the other one is saying, "Wow, you do all that in one day and work? There's something wrong with this picture."
Yeah.
And people have and said, "Well, I need to be home a little bit more," and now start to. So we're seeing the great resignation is not this one-time movement. It's not like the World Series where everything's going to happen in a short period of time. We're talking about this is going to take some time to maneuver, and I imagine in 2-3 years it is going to look a lot different, and everything that we know to be true now and to be constant is not going to look the same anymore the next few years. So I think that's an important part of it. Andrew wanted to add, says, so I'm interested into moving different industries. However, I would love to obtain a job working abroad for a year, learning a different work culture and language. Any suggestions on going in this challenge? One of the things I think, Andrew, you'll have to really think about is get really focused and narrow down the 2 or 3 things that you would want to do, and start to look at that and start to talk to people in those industries. It sounds like to me, even from the other comment, that you're kind of wide open, and really it makes it tough for anybody to give you advice, whether it's going to be a friend or a coach, to give you great advice by all the possibilities. But I think one of the things I've learned throughout the years, in having done one-on-one as well as doing things on a larger scale, is that you have to be really clear, at least 2 or 3 things that you want to do, that you've investigated and that you're going to take seriously, because it's possible you might be able to try a couple of those things by doing some temporary work or doing some contract work, if you have those particular skills, or that you'll need to access your network to help you out as far as contacting those people and getting in those industries and perhaps getting a referral. Jessica, you want to take a stab at it?
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely agree with that. And then I think you touched on the other things that I would say. Networking is a huge piece of it.
Mhm.
Talking to people and letting them know what it is that you're looking for. So that's the other thing I would add.
How about you, Jack? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll add this from a different perspective, is that be prepared for pushback, because even though it's a relatively good market, it depends what sector. And companies still, how like there's all this change that we're having, but management can't help to go back to where things were. And where things were is that, hey, here's the job description, here's like the 10, 20 things, we want you to have it. And if you don't have it, they're not terribly interested right away, and they're going to look for people who have it. So don't get discouraged. I'm a big believer, Andrew. If you want to do something, you go and you do it, and you do everything in your power to make it happen. But that being said, just to manage expectations, if you start hitting brick walls, don't get frustrated. Don't think it's you. It's just it's just the way the managers think. They can't get their head around the fact that, wow, Andrew's a really smart guy. He's enthusiastic, he's passionate, he knows this. We could train him, we could upskill him, and he could do the job. It's like, nope, you don't check all the boxes. Sorry, buddy. Next. So don't let that dash your hopes. If your dream is to go work internationally or whatever you want to do, just go after it, and don't get discouraged when you get some pushback.
That's true, and I think that more people will be helpful and will even jump in to help once they see that you're focused, and that if you're interested in working, you would have figured out how to migrate to that country, or how to even work internationally. Could also mean that from where you live now to that other country, you can work for them where you live now. So with the remote, it's not just relegated to United States or the country that you live in. There are other countries that you can work for in that country from where you live. So there's a whole shift in thinking now, and I think it's just a matter of getting clarity and getting some understanding, and having a few more conversations will help clear that for you. But having said that, take the time you need to think it all the way through, because if you want to make a move where you'll be happy and that you'll have some job satisfaction. Let's head very short. This
Yeah,
would
this
be
went quickly. I'm looking at the time.
I
Yeah.
know, right? Yeah, because
Wow.
of great interaction, and thank all you guys in the chat
Great
for
guess. Makes time fly, right?
absolutely. Then again, that happens every week, so
No, never. It's
it's
always
a
slow. It's just today because Jessica was so awesome that it went quickly. Every other time it drags. No,
Yeah,
whoever.
this kind of goes along with Andrew's question and a couple of comments that we had already. Is how would job seekers find out if a position is remote, or if the job description doesn't say what it is? And we get a lot of that now. Even though the big talk about the Great Resignation is about remote or hybrid, a lot of job descriptions still aren't being really specific. And we probably have time for everybody to chime in one time each, before we wrap it up for the hour. So, Jack, go ahead, and how
It's
can
fun.
someone find out?
I mean, if let's say you go to LinkedIn and you put in remote, it comes up pretty nicely in your job board, and you can find it. Um, and it is prominently displayed. So that makes so LinkedIn is definitely good about it. Same thing with Indeed. I think though, there's an awful lot of companies that say remote, but they really rather not have remote. So it's not only saying remote, you got to kind of explore a little bit to the company to
Mhm.
see if they're going to really stand behind it. Because sometimes when I look through these job descriptions and you drill down, it kind of almost gives like an asterisk saying we reserve the right to say you got to come in the
Yes.
office, or it's remote for the time being. So it's yeah. If you really search remote, you'll find remote jobs, but then you want to do that second step to make sure they're not going to do a bait and switch where then it's like, oh, sorry, well, you got to go in the office.
Hmm. Hmm. All right, Jessica.
Yeah, I mean, that is all, I think, true. And the other thing is to look at what's happening with other employees of that same organization, and talk to people. Talk to people, see what's happening, see if you can find some new hires, what's happened with them, find some people that are doing the same kind of role that you're doing for that organization, what's happening with them. Because you can ask what's happening with this specific role, and like Jack's saying, like they may tell you one thing, it may turn out to be something else. But the best you can do is try to do your own research.
Yep, yep. And the best research in this particular case is talking to people, see if they're already remote and the position has been remote, or maybe it's coming back to the office for a particular reason, which you want to find out reason why. But there are some cases where you can create a remote position if you're savvy enough and you have the right conversations with. If you bring X amount to the table that they don't have yet, and they want that, then that's something that you can use to bargain instead of maybe a 10% jump, maybe part of that could be just say, hey, I'll take 10% off the table if I could work remote, because it might be to your advantage because of the market that you're in. You're not paying the big city prices because you're not doing the transportation like you used to. All of that very much is what we're seeing as part of the trend, could equal 25% of the salary.
Yeah.
And that's why we work for a larger company. They said, well, we're going to cut your salary for between 15 and 25%. That may not necessarily be a bad thing, being that there were surveys done. They were willing to say, hey, I'll take a pay cut to work remote. So all those options there on the table, I would say try to extend it to look at all of them. And also, but basically, yeah, don't do it without talking to people who are already in the company, who are already doing it, and maybe even somebody that's done the job. And maybe there might be some hiccups in working remote already, and you may not want that job for a particular reason. So I'll just go ahead and wrap it up here. We have 5 minutes before the hour. Jessica, what do you have coming up that the people should know about?
Ooh, thank you for
Hmm.
saying that. So I have a webinar coming up. Ooh, and I should know when it is, right? It's, I believe it's on the 28th. I'll have it posted on my LinkedIn. So if you go to my LinkedIn, I will have a post about it. And it's all about how to get hired faster. So if you want to join me on the 28th, I think it's 6 p.m. Eastern, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, Jack is going to be on Oprah. We don't know exactly when that's going to be, uh, but I'm sure he'll post it on his profile. I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Jack.
No, actually, not much on the horizon in terms of other than just my regular work stuff.
Yes, and other than just spoken at Harvard a couple of times, that's
Yeah,
really
that was pretty
good.
cool.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
that was
yeah.
yeah, that was pretty cool. It was good because it was really relevant because both there are two classes. One is like graduate, one is undergraduate, and it's kind of HR management. So it
Hmm.
was interesting to hear from them, like how they view things and how they, how they process stuff, and to share kind of some of the things that we talk about here.
Hmm.
So, and really, what struck me too, I don't, it's amazing how many international students are there.
Oh,
So
I'm not surprised at all. I think I think half the
I didn't
enrollment is
know that. I didn't know
international.
how
Yeah.
big, and so it was like really interesting because people had so many different viewpoints and so many different perspectives. And I guess from a lot of the countries they come from, it's so different how things work. So, it's a really lively conversation. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, that's very definitely cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things coming up. I'm doing an interview here in a couple of hours with for a show that's going to be on YouTube and Facebook, if I'm not mistaken. And then I'm also going to be on Clubhouse tomorrow with Annette Richmond, Don Rasmussen, and Danielle Guzman. So we're
What's it
doing.
about? What's
Uh, um, I'm like Jessica. I forgot exactly what it
I know.
is.
Yeah. Well, I imagine it's
I
career
just I
related.
just know
I
that
imagine
people
it'd be
were
that,
talking
right?
about the future of work in general, and there was a particular wrinkle that came up, which is going to be a great discussion. So if you're on Clubhouse,
Oh, check it out.
join us tomorrow. I'll be sure to post it. I haven't posted it yet. That's probably the reason why I haven't gotten to it. And then Friday, of course, it is the Modern Job Search Checklist right here, the same time and just about the same channel if you follow my timeline. So, for the rest of us, thank you very much for joining us. And thank you for all those who joined us in the chat. I think there was Melissa, there was Erica, there was Andrew who asked some really great questions. Thank you so much. This is why we do what we do, give somebody some great help and practicality. Michael, I'm sorry I missed your comment earlier. That I hope you found the rest of it pretty useful for yourself. And Elaine Santiago, thank you very much for joining us and asking your question early. We are here every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 o'clock Central. And next week, in the next couple of weeks, we got a whole bunch of guests. I don't want to announce them because, there's too many, but we're filling up the calendar. And if you're a career pro and you're interested in joining us, hook us up with a DM. Either Jack or I will be glad to find a slot for you. Those slots are filling up, though, so be sure you do that soon. In the meantime, Jessica,
Good.
thank you so much for
Thanks,
joining
Jessica. It's good seeing
us.
you.
Guys,
We
Good seeing you
loved
again.
you, and we knew that we would because I heard your podcast with Jack. It was quite lively. By the way, if you
thank
want
you.
to check that out,
Excellent.
check out the Recruiter podcast on your podcast directory. Again, thank you very much. You all have a great week.
Thanks. Thanks, Jessica. Thanks.